Assalamu alaikum. Good evening and hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Saira Khan. I have some eminent scholars and people from the armed forces here as panelists. And this is a panel that really interests me a lot, and I'm going to talk about the panel a little bit before I open up the floor, in other words, ask questions to the panelists. But even before that, I'm going to make a request, which I've been meaning to do for the past 1.5 days, which I couldn't do because I was not standing in front of the podium. Please, would you be kind enough to turn off your cell phones? It is extremely disrespectful to the panelists. I, for one, don't hear much when I'm sitting as an audience, and I'm terribly jet-lagged. I'm defocused often. Forgive me for that as well. Please do not talk, and if you do need to talk, if you can step outside, would be really kind of you and respectful to the panelists. So if you have read the description of the panel, you've noticed that there are several questions there. And the questions that I'll pose to the panelists will be actually coming from, of course, the description. I'll actually break them down into different questions. And this may sound like an academic talking about methodology. It's going to be a bit of that. But it's going to be easier for you to follow and easier for my panelists to actually understand the questions and be able to respond to the questions. So if you've noticed, there is a fact there, which is that Russia has waged a war on Ukraine. There are two assumptions there that China will most likely follow in the footsteps of Russia in invading Taiwan, which is debatable. Third is another assumption that this will probably, again, in all likelihood, lead to a Cold War, which is Cold War 2.0, or in the making, Cold War in the making, or this will be factored into that calculation. This may not directly trigger a Cold War, but this will be factored into that calculation, into the framework of a new Cold War between the US and China. So there is a fact, there are two assumptions, there is a prediction, there is a fine line between assumptions and predictions. So there is a prediction, which is that with this attack on Taiwan will have a regional impact for sure, which is South Asia, in the extra-regional sphere for sure, which is Southeast Asia or the Indo-Pacific, and how do you deal with it? So there is a question there, are we ready to deal with it? A fact that Russia has invaded Ukraine, by seeing that, China is likely to invade Taiwan, which is an assumption, and then if China invades Taiwan, then there's going to be a conflict, which is already there between the US and China, and this conflict, the rivalry, will protract further, leading to a new Cold War, and with that, there will be fallouts in this part of the world, which is South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Indo-Pacific. And that means this will also have an impact on the South China Sea, how to divide, how to resolve the problems of freedom of navigation, and so on and so forth. And there is a question there. After the prediction, there's a question, are we ready to deal with it? And there is a policy recommendation. Can we not? It's almost like, asking the audience or the panelists. If you pose a question to the panelists, it's for you to answer that, or the panelists, if they are answering that question. Can we not think about that? This last thing really interests me because I'm working on that, which is, can we not think about cooperation under conflicts? Meaning, if the US and China have a new Cold War, and there are problems, of course, pertaining to the South China Sea in terms of freedom of navigation and resources. How do you manage who controls what, which part, and so on and so forth? And already China is disregarding, according to the US, many of those rules, the laws of the sea. And Can we not have some degree of diplomacy there? Can we not have some kind of compromise there? And so on and so forth. So these are the questions that I will actually ask my panelists. They come directly. I've actually extracted those from the panel description. If I may say a few things very briefly, because if I'm standing in front of a podium and there's a microphone, I can talk nonstop for 3-4 hours, which I'm not going to do today. But if I can just quickly talk about international relations and American foreign policy a little bit, because it's very interesting to talk about that. Just think about the evolution. If you think about today's focus on the Indo-Pacific, you need to go back to the end of the Cold War. So the Cold War ended. What was in the offing? This is the end of history. There won't be a war. There won't be a war. So the liberal world order has had its victory, and China at some point will actually have to live with it, accept it, come to an understanding that this is it. Wars won't undo it. Let's just face it. End of history, no wars. In just a few years' time, you've seen the tale of the two worlds, core and the periphery. So there is a big distinction between the main powers and the peripheral powers, and we are in the peripheries. Of course, you do understand that. In the core, there won't be wars. In the peripheral states, there will be wars. And make no mistake in remembering that those wars were triggered by the United States. So just to name a few, one maybe at this point, quickly, the US identifies rogue states and states of concern. So it's Iran, Iraq, North Korea. Two of them turn out to be nuclear weapon states, and one was destroyed, devastated, there was a war, and so on and so forth. We are fortunate that Saddam's no longer there, and we are indebted to the US on that. But at the end of the day, there was a war which was waged by the United States. Moving forward, quickly, once all those things somewhat were under the carpet, what did we see? Pivot to Asia. Of course, that started during the Obama period. After that, focus on Indo-Pacific. Just 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, this month, what was it? Pivot towards greater emphasis on diplomacy. So what are these? These are American foreign policies. I tell my undergraduate students all the time, why I say undergraduate students is because this is the foundation period. If you need to tell them that international politics is not American foreign policy. International politics is about the systemic foreign policies and the subsystemic foreign policies, meaning the regional foreign policies and the global foreign policies. Together, we make up the world. And in the past 1.5 days, we've talked a lot about how much population we have in this part of the world, how much resources we have, and so on and so forth. So it is important for us to understand that these are their national security policies. These are their national security strategies. These are not ours to think about. If there is a war between the US and China, or when I say war, I don't mean war. There could be a war. There could also be a Cold War, which we are talking about, Cold War 2.0. But at the end of the day, if there is a war of that nature, what do? You don't want to be engaged in that war. You want to stay away as a regional power from that war. So on that note, I'm going to actually give my panelists the chance to talk. One of the first questions is, what do you think? I think I'm going to ask Air Commodore Ishfaq, Ilahi, Choudhury to answer that question. I just said that I have extrapolated these questions from the description. So one of the first questions is, would China actually follow in the footsteps of Russia in invading Taiwan? How do you see the situation? Is it likely that China would do that? And why would it do that? Does it have a national security strategy based on that?
Madam, I'm sorry to say that you've already taken 10 minutes of our...
Okay.
How many minutes do I have? How many minutes do I have?
I'm not going to talk in between. 5.
5 minutes, right?
Yes.
Good. So your question is that this Russia-Ukraine war, is it going to prompt? Well, there was a lot of speculation in our media also, I have spoken, and especially when Nancy Pelosi was visiting, and there was huge Chinese military strength display and all. And there was a lot of questions that will they invade at a later stage. But let me tell you that Taiwan is, first of all, China has got the message from Ukraine. Ukraine being a contiguous, with Russia, they have given a thorough beating to the Russian, offensive forces. And that should be a lesson for any powers attacking another country. And Taiwan has a serious advantage because there is a 100 kilometers of sea. To launch an attack on Taiwan, they have to cross these 100 kilometers and they have to prepare themselves, and they have to also control the air and the sea between the Chinese mainland and all. So, and over all these years, Taiwan has devised a defensive system. They call it the porcupine policy. You know, the porcupine can, even a lion will not be able to, you see, approach them. So, because they have that defensive. So, if at all it had come to a military attack, the Chinese will not have a walkover. Not only they will not have a walkover, they will have a devastation, you see, not only caused in their area, there will be, other implications. So at no stage I felt that there will be, Chinese attack on Taiwan. And I'm sure after this G20 talks and all that, things are much more, under control. And there will be, we are all the time talking about the one China and all, but nobody is asking what is the Taiwanese view. Taiwan, for the child who was born in 1949 is now 70 years plus. He has never been a Chinese. And the Taiwanese today would like to know them, let the world know that they are Taiwanese. Okay. So even if there is any negotiation in future, that best answer in my view is to have a referendum, where because without the opinion of the people, we just can't allow Taiwan to join in. And of course, in the surrounding, you see, if China wants to be a major power someday, they have to first build up the relationship all around her. And see, from Korea to Japan to Taiwan to Philippines to Vietnam, Vietnam is a communist country and wasn't their ally. But today, they are not, just because of the Chinese policy of aggressive, inroads into South China. So they have to build up all these things. And also, maybe he will talk about it, their relationship with the borders with India. You see, that's what, you see, because the colonial legacy, if they want to go back to the Ming dynasty's border, then there will be problem with everybody. So I think Chinese leadership understands it today, and I do not foresee any major conflict in that area. And in fact, the best way is to be a peaceful settlement, and the best way is the business. Because you see, even Taiwan, $400 billion export, out of that 160 billion goes to China. So they have the biggest partner. Why should they disturb that? They're the largest microprocessor, manufacturer in the world, and the customers are China. So it's a mutually developed. Yes, there's a lot of this is a rhetoric. Most of the rhetoric made for their own people, domestic consumption. Because Xi Jinping also has to consolidate his position. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no, immediate, possibility of another Cold War beginning in that area. Thank you.
Since you didn't use your time, can I ask a little bit of a follow-up question to you? Yes, just a quick question. So then if that's correct, then why did China start the military drilling?
The military maneuver?
Drilling, yes.
Yes, because you see, first of all, China doesn't want they think the American inroads there is they are in the backyard, okay? So they don't want that. And also, as I said, that much of it was actually meant for the domestic crowd in China, because the Chinese Communist Party, conference was coming up, and where for the first time Xi Jinping was looking for his third term, and in fact he has declared that he will be lifetime president. So he had his other contenders. So I think he wanted to consolidate his domestic position as well, and also send a signal to the neighbors that there will be consequences if you involve militarily. But I tell you that if there is a military conflict, the Chinese are going to suffer a lot. And all the achievements that they have made in the last 50 years 70 years, they won't like to lose it, So I think the chance of war is very less.
Okay, thank you. Brigadier General Sakhawat Hussain, if I may ask you to respond to the question on the Cold War between the US and China, where do you see it going? Is there a Cold War? Is it in the making? Will it happen in the future? Will Taiwan be part of it? Or will that trigger? Or, like he said, that probably there won't be a war over Taiwan. If that doesn't happen, can we still think that there's going to be a Cold War? And how do you define a Cold War? Will it be comparable to the Cold War that we've had in the Cold War years?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, CGS, for involving me here, which I really don't know what I'm doing here. I never knew anywhere, wherever I was, what was I doing there. To start with, that's how I start. I'm yet not very clear that what we are looking for. As a Bangladeshi or as a South Asian, my thoughts are different. Having read few of the books, maybe, particularly when I read Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger, who says that United States must dominate, it must not give up its position to anybody, for that matter. And if I quote Mr. Mr. Swami, in his book he writes that whenever there is a new anti-culture or not a similar culture country comes up as a superpower, there's uproar in the whole of geopolitics. And he mentions that when Britain demised as superpower, the Americans came up, there was this similar culture, and there was no hue and cry. But when Russian came up, there was a hue and cry. Now Russian has demised. The Chinese are trying to come up, so there's a hue and cry. To answer very straight to you, I see no reason at this stage why China would attack Taiwan, knowing fully well that China is not yet militarily equipped to equate with United States. May what come, United States is still the most powerful country in the world, and they have capacity to fight three-front war. At present, they're deployed in two fronts. One is in Europe, and the other one is in Southeast Asia. And, well, the policies of Mr. Biden is very simple. He is reviving what America was in 19th century or the 20th century. Therefore, I don't see that we have to be much concerned about the Chinese military overture in the Taiwan. Well, one can say that the tension grows. The tension grows, the tension is accentuated by Americans' policy, their national policy, not the Chinese national policy. Of course, the China has its ambition, but that ambition is not yet militarily exposed anywhere. Having said that, how we are concerned, Bangladeshi, let's talk about that. I am concerned with what is happening around Bay of Bengal. I am concerned when we talk about the Taiwan and the Chinese overture. I'm concerned how Bay of Bengal is becoming polarized. It is the most militarized, if not ocean bay, I would say, in the whole of the world. Imagine 3 neighboring countries are nuclearized: India, Pakistan, and China. And we Bangladeshis are very much within the arc. And not only that, from the sea point of view, when we talk of Quad, we talk of the American policy towards Southeast Asia. We have to remember that we don't have much exit. Our only exit through Bay of Bengal, which can be blocked anytime. The conflict, small little conflict between India and China, China who is now having a footstep in Myanmar. And our problem, the national problem that we have, is what is going to happen in Rakhine State from whatever it is, and how we are facing, how we are facing 1.2 million Rohingya refugees. Nobody has come near to solve that problem. Neither the Americans, nor the Indians, nor the Chinese. We don't know what to do with it. And that is our big problem that I feel, which is almost going to engulf the Southeast Asia and East Asia as well. Therefore, what happens in China is not much important to me than what is happening in Bay of Bengal. And it's very much linked to its South China Sea. We are seeing a contest between the Indian power and the Chinese power, and we are rolled in between. And that is what is more worried when we talk about the Quad and when we talk about the IPS. But finally, I would say I don't see the Chinese are threatening. They are threatening because they always remind that one China policy, which almost every country has agreed. But what would be the policy, how this one China is going to be achieved, whether it is through force or whether it is through negotiation? That is what is the bone of contention. But what I see today, if the Russia has attacked Ukraine, you have to see the geopolitics of the whole part of it, whether it is the heartland of Europe, which is now Russia is trying to take it, and the West is trying to defend because this is the heartland. And if it goes to Russia, then there's a big problem in Europe. Remember that the First World War was fought, that was a European war. Second World War, of course, involved the others. We don't want to see another Third World War by just saying that Russia is fighting a war in Ukraine and the China is going to emulate the same. I do not agree to that. And my small little reading says China is not yet capable of just taking Taiwan by force. And it is nothing but, I see, birth of a superpower which is not being accepted by the established superpower and the middle power in this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next question, once again, is about the prediction, which I would request Lieutenant General M. Aminul Karim to answer. So this is about the ramifications. I mean, I know both of these speakers have said there's not going to be an attack on Taiwan, and then we don't see a new Cold War happening right now. There's no imminent danger. But then, had it been, should a situation of this nature occur, what would happen? If this happened, let's say there was the Taiwan incident that we are talking about, this panel was expecting at some point, before the Bali summit, let's say, you know, the rhetoric was there, Nancy Pelosi visited, and then there was the drilling, and there was all sorts of rhetorics about aggressive moves and so on and so forth. The idea was that there would be a war, right, over Taiwan. And if, assuming that we didn't have these panelists and this didn't happen, this kind of perspectives were not there in the offing, what would be the ramifications of such an attack on the South Asian region, the Indo-Pacific, or the South China Sea?
Thank you, Professor Saira.
Welcome.
Very good question. Let us paint a picture. And you have rightly pointed out, Taiwan is the linchpin, actually. It is the basis of all the conflict. Why I'm saying so? Because in Second World War, Japan had an airfield over here, and they fought their war in this part of the world from Taiwan. Taiwan controls East China Sea, Taiwan controls South China Sea. And what happened? There's an airfield between Okinawa of Japan and Taiwan. So American Air Force is based there, Japanese Air Force is based there, and Taiwan is the common strategic objectives of both Japan and America. And if America is going for attack if China is going for attack on Taiwan, America will come in, definitely. And Japan will also come in, definitely. Yeah, the point, my seniors from the military, I think this panel is highly militarized.
That's what I can feel. That's why I said armed forces. I shouldn't have said. I think we have a research fellow from
some more civilians here.
where are you from?
So what I'm trying to say, if you are in control of Taiwan, then you can launch your operation in South China Sea in a better way. Because that will be the hub, the logistic hub, the military hub. Then, the China can divert its resources from Fujian province to Taiwan, and then control East China Sea and South China Sea, and also Malacca Strait. So these are linked up. So China will not give up the vision of attacking Taiwan in the long run. No, that I'll never say that. At this point, say next 5-10 years, they will not. But my projection, this was my PhD thesis actually, I projected that they'll do it in 2050. And China will overtake the American economy by 2030. I did this thesis in 2007, and my projection has come true. China is already number one in real economic terms. And from there, they will come to South China Sea. South China Sea has a problem of, the 9-dash line China is claiming, which is not correct. As per the UNCLOS, it is not correct. As per, they have signed the DOC with ASEAN, which is, again, not mandatory. Now, ASEAN is trying to sign COC with China. That may be binding, but this is not coming up so soon. Now, South China Sea, you see, China and America had long, strings of diplomatic parleys and activities, starting from 1971. Even before that, in 50s and 60s, they had about 250 ambassadorial level talks. And in 1971, Prime Minister Zhou Enlai sent a message to President Nixon through President Ilahi Khan. There, the 1970 war came in, and Kissinger went to China, and they said that you have to accept that China is one. America, in principle, has accepted that, but there is ambiguities. They have the communique of 1972, they have the communique of 1979, they have the communique of 1982, and then they have, they have promulgated the Taiwan Relations Act, and President Clinton promised to the Chinese 3 no's that we'll never say 2 Chinas, we'll never say one Taiwan, we'll always say one China. In principle, agreed. China has about 2,000 missiles earmarked for Taiwan. China can mobilize a division in amphibious landing, crossing once, as Ishfaq has said, 100-mile, Taiwan state line. They can move an entire division in one go. They can fire 1,000 missiles in one go. They can fire cruise missiles, they can fire ballistic missiles, and they have got 5th-generation aircraft earmarked dedicated for Taiwan. But the point is, China at this point in time is following carrot and stick policy. They are first going for economic integration. It is not doing that good, but they're still trying that. But China is also following the stick policy. They are showing the deterrence, but if in case Taiwan declares independence, unilateral independence, then China is going to strike back, no doubt about that. They will see that America is a little far away, and they will launch their amphibious operation. Before that, there will be heavy artillery bombardment, there will be heavy missile bombardment, there will be cruise missile bombardments, and so forth. But that's a distant past, 1940s or 50s. So they are waiting for that. But economic integration is continuing between China and or something like that. Yeah. So that will be my visualization of the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is for Lieutenant General Arun Kumar Sahni. This is, you've been kind enough to say, well, I can answer anything. So that really helps me because this is an open-ended question. Are we really prepared to face a new Cold War between the US and China? Had it been the US and somebody else, would have been different. But we are talking about China, which has a territorial conflict with India, which is a protracted conflict. You've fought wars, and I'm assuming that you've been involved in that war. And if that's the case, you are the right person to talk about it. That what kind of preparation did we need, and should we be planning at this point? Are we prepared to face a war between the US and China? Once again, when I say war, I really don't refer to a hot war, a Cold War that involves crisis and warlike situations. It can be rhetorics. It can be, in other words, there would be, like he said, there would be fallouts, there would be ramifications in this part of the world in terms of the economy, in terms of taking sides, in terms of focusing on balance of power, bandwagoning, focusing on the non-aligned stance, and so on and so forth. We don't want to be part of any of these, big powers. And whether or not, once again, it probably brings us back to that primary question: Cold War, is it the same kind of Cold War? So I think this is very important.
Firstly, thank you, Dr. Saira, for the question. But before that, let me thank CGS for having invited me here, Zulur for having got us here after a lot of effort over the last 2 years, where there's been a lot of back-chatting to try and get us all here. But thank you very much, and thank you to his team who's made us stay extremely comfortable. Outstanding question for the reason, as you said, I think your premise was that this is an assumption. And I think you're absolutely right. But before I go on to address the issue of the Cold War, the impact, and will there be a Cold War in the Cold War 2.0? Will it be something similar to what is there? Before I answer that, let me just look at two issues. What are the two issues that have come out of the Russia-Ukraine war? One of the first issue that has come out is that there is a fast, rapid, and a co-jointed and an integrated response to Russia, whether it's on economic support, whether a nation like Ukraine has been able to stand up because of the outside capacities that came in. Technology, firepower has helped, but human resilience has really taken a toll. And one of the issues that has really impacted Russia is this attritional war has had casualties, and that has affected the image of Russia as a nation state. So that's one lesson that China will have to take away from that. That any war that happens in the capture of Taiwan, which is attritional in nature, it will hit his image because cost of human value demeans the status and the stature of the nation when it goes ahead. So that brings me to the next issue that I would like to highlight, that if you look at Taiwan, what way will it be? Will it be an actual physical attack? As you're aware that today there is the basic population profile is at least about 90% is Han Chinese that actually inhabit the island. Today there is within the armed forces, the few years back that I did have an interaction about 3-4 years back with them, there is a large, strong feeling of oneness with the mainland. So tomorrow, if there is some kind of a I would say a hot war attack in an attritional manner, but there is something which is done and instigated within the nation that it capitulates and decides to join up irrespective of the resistance within the country, then the situation is going to be totally different. So I think the issue that I would like to take back, China will see there are some good lessons, but the attritional trade-off that would impact its image will be a deterrent for it to go. That is the first issue that I would, but going aside that there would be, is there a probability? Yes, as of now, there isn't a probability. But if I look at how Russia-Ukraine war emanated, how did it happen? There has been a great amount of, Russia had been talking about its security requirements, the security matrix not being addressed, whereas the nations with NATO expansion continued to sort of trigger this, incite him to a point of rebellion. He carried out exercise Zapad 1, Zapad 2 about 2 years, 3 years before to give the indication that please don't cross the Rubicon as far as I am concerned. But who created this Rubicon to take it to the next level? That was America. I mean, the rhetoric was created that Russia is going to go to war. It's going to take over Ukraine. There has been a great amount of resolution and resolute actions that have initiated that will capitulate. So this information war that built up created a hype to see that this war happened. When it happened today, I think the best winner of the whole game today is China, USA as far as this is concerned. Their economy is thriving, gas and oil trade has gone up, energy trade has gone out. Half the world of European world is now remilitarizing, so all the defense industries are thriving. Their shares have gone up by 30% in the last 5 years, in the last 5 months. So there is a great advantage. So I'm extremely worried that with the visit of Pelosi, with other kind of visits that are happening here, you're creating a hype about this extended deterrence where you're talking about giving this extended deterrence to Taiwan. You are actually creating a situation which is instigating or actually fueling the fire that exists out there. So it could erupt. What is the second problem that's happening in China? There is an economic slowdown. There is an internal kind of catharsis as far as the economy is going. If that goes bad to worse, situations don't improve in the other areas with India and the other areas with Hong Kong, things back up, there might just be no other option but for him to go to war. So what I'm trying to say is, though today it doesn't look apparent, but the slide from this a situation of it's not going to happen at all, the slide is extremely sudden as it happened in Russia. Everybody kept predicting, and everybody, I mean, all of us wagered bets that it's not going to go to war. I mean, I also served in Russia, so as a military diplomat, so I would go by the fact, but I think we were all proven wrong because the issues and the atmosphere that was created led to this confrontation. So that could be a cause of actually seeing a China-Taiwan thing happening in the near term, which one of the European speakers yesterday, Hans, had talked about, maybe 24, 27. It could happen because the conditions exist. How they will pan out is what the issue is. Now, the issue is that if it happens, what do you do? Can diplomacy and deterrence, diplomacy play a role? I don't think so in isolation. So what is the answer? The answer is deterrence has to be relooked at in this intervening period to ensure that the leverages that China will have when a war happens like this, undoubtedly there will be a disruption of trade and commerce. There will be a political polarization that will happen. You will have to choose sides. You might have an arrangement of a non-aligned movement or a status emanating in a different form. Why I'm saying a different form? That today China and the US, even when they're talking, you're not talking about a total cut between the two sides. The old Cold War alliances were total blocks which created and had their own resource banks, their supply chain, their management. Today, they are totally intertwined. And if you're intertwined, as I said, Indian trade has grown to 125 billion. It was bought out. It's grown since the time of 2020 concentration. Today, it's 700 billion kind of trade between the US and China, irrespective of the last 3 years of chaos that is going on. So what you're really looking at, a polycentric world order, that's what you're talking about. So what will get initiated in this whole process is that this transition that is coming out may get faster and speedier, where certain amount of the the weaker nations, the smaller nations, the middle-income nations may either have to adopt sides to be able to survive. So you would see certain amount of polarization. That's the political fallout. What will happen because of this? Exactly what's happening in Europe today. The security situation will get worse. Why? Because there will be militarization of all these small powers to try and make certain amount of military capability. So there will be a arms purchase cascading impact in the whole area. When you have everybody armed, then smaller issues of tolerance end up in being a violent fight. So if I'm at 20 and I meet somebody in a brawl outside in a bar, I might actually go into a brawl. When I become 60, I think twice about wanting to take panga with somebody. So the same story is going to happen here. When I have weapons and I think I'm strong enough, and you have a very, very, as you say, very autocratic democracies emerging today in the world, you never know what direction that he decides to go. So the initiation and the security situation of this whole area is going to disrupt. If today 60 to 80% of trade transits of different categories, commodities, energy, through the South China Sea, well, I'm sorry, you're going to see a disruption of this. The minute that disruption happens, what has happened is the geoeconomics are going to start playing. Singapore, which is a port, which actually, as it says, the kind of trade that transits through Singapore is 3 times the GDP of that Singapore, which is extremely high. So today, when you look at a country like that, you will have to start looking at alternates. Can Singapore take the job of being the residual? So in that, I think I look at opportunities. Opportunities for the Andaman Nicobar, opportunities for the South Asian nations to have different deports which can assist you to take advantage of an opportunity, which is not the best thing to happen. But I think in nation states, you look after your own interest. So that's an opportunity that could come out. But I think more importantly, what I would see is that this disruption is going to cause an upheaval, a transition of the new global order, whether it will be a polycentric, whether it will be otherwise, is a matter of conjecture. We can always see the contours of how it will. But I think the last issue that I'd like to flag is the issue of deterrence is something that you'll have to look at. And deterrence, I think, has been in what forms? I mean, as I see, one of the issues, I was attending one of these webinars the other day, I heard about minilaterals being talked about. Okay, the lattice work of minilaterals which addresses the concerns of the smaller nations, will give synergy for them to continue. The resilience of supply chain reduces the dependency. It builds up a capacity to be able to fight. So that is how you should go. Today, when I see the advantage of pandemic, which all of us have done, is this Atmanirbharta, that is self-reliance, capacities to look at the critical issues within your area. I think, and I'll end by stating this, that this is all the more reason, this hypothetical situation, that South Asia has to get together so that we are resilient enough to be able to tackle the economic fallout of a situation like this. And I'll end
Thank
with
you
that.
very much for
Thank
your
you.
detailed explanation. But actually, I have many questions for you, but I'll take it outside, not here, because there are people waiting to ask questions, and we still have a panelist who's going to answer the last question. The last question is also very open-ended. It's kind of normative and also something, like I said in the beginning, interests me because we've seen the US and Soviet Union fighting, being Cold War rivals, extreme rivals, two superpowers, but at the end of the day, they were able to come down to the negotiating table and sign the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks 1, 2, Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, also, although that was for the world, but bilateral arms treaties were signed. We had the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty and all sorts of things during the Cold War. So can we not, even if we had, this is a very, very good question that actually comes from the panel's description, that whether or not we can have cooperation, even if there is a conflict between the United States and China. Can we have cooperation? Can we have diplomacy? It's a question to, I hope I pronounce your name correctly. It's Dr. Satoru Nagao, right? He's a research fellow. Since he's not from the armed forces, I'm going to actually give his designation out. So he's a resident fellow, if I'm not incorrect, at the Hudson Institute, right?
Yes, my experience in the military is only 2 years as a first
I actually
lieutenant.
cannot
That's
hear
true.
you.
To compare with just very short, that's true.
Do you want to come
But at
closer
the
to the
same
mic?
time,
Yes.
yes, I was a military officer, that's true. And anyway, United States, huh? Yeah? Hello? Okay. Okay. Well, yesterday I mentioned about the history of the United States, the last 246 years. The US is a country to compete with other, and because US win the competition, they change the country from the just colony of the British Empire to the only one superpower in the world. If so, even if something temporary, the ceasefire has happened between US and China, we cannot expect it will be the end of the Cold War. So that is why we should not rely on such kind of cooperation between US and China. So how to deter China will be the big matter. So what should we do? Indeed, when we checked China's activities, indeed there are 3 features, not only in the Taiwan, but also East China Sea, South China Sea, the South Pacific, Indian Ocean, and in the China border area. 3 features is, firstly, China do not respect international law. For example, in the East China Sea, before the 1970s, China did not claim the Senkaku Island of Japan, but they find the Senkaku Island is important to make pressure towards Taipei, or they find the natural resources under the sea. That's why they start claiming. This means that they change the claim. So lack of the respect of the international law is one of the features. And secondly, is when China found a power vacuum, they tried to steal it. That is another pattern. And what happened in the South China Sea is in 1950s, when France withdrew from Indochina Peninsula, they take half of the Paracel Island. In 1970s, after the Vietnam War, US withdrew from Vietnam. China takes another half of the Paracel Island. In 1980s, Soviet troops reduced the number in Vietnam. China takes 6 feet of the Spratly Island. In 1990s, when US withdrew from Philippines, China takes the Mischief Reef. So when the military balance has changed, they find the power vacuum, they steal it. They are thief. So that is another feature. And third feature is attempt economic dominance or the other non-military method. It's a very important method to expand their territory. So, for example, the Belt and Road Initiative, what happened in Sri Lanka? They invest and to build the Hambantota port. After that, this investment is was trapped. People realized it because the high interest rate. Sri Lanka cannot return the money, and the huge debt they create, and they give China the right of the control of the Hambantota port for 99 years. In Chinese, 99 years means that the same pronunciation with the forever. So this means that China takes it forever in Chinese. That is the meaning. So this is dangerous. So if so, what should I do? We should do the opposite of what China wants. So firstly, we must respecting the rule-based order based on the current international law. Secondly, maintaining the military balance. Why Japan focusing on the offensive cavalry? Why the India is developing the new cruise missiles? Why even if Australia try to possess the Tomahawk missile, both the conventional submarine and the nuclear submarine under the AUKUS? Because if we have the offensive capability, China cannot forget the other side when they focus on other side. For example, if China want to attack Taiwan, in this case, China need to worry about the India-China border. If China want to attack India, in this case, China need to worry about the Pacific side, because all of these countries has the offensive capability. And integrate military and non-military policy as an overall strategy is also the matter of, we should seek as a strategy. Because, yes, China suggests a very good investment project, but indeed that is a trap. That's why the Quad prepares alternative infrastructure project, or because of we rely on Chinese market, we cannot say we cannot criticize China even if China violates international law. In this case, we need to create alternative market, supply chain, or economic security we call recently. Why we need? Because China uses this kind of the non-military method to expand their territory. If so, we need to focus on this area, non-military method. China is rich, that is a problem. China is rich because China is rich, they can increase the military expenditure. China is rich, they can do the Belt and Road Initiative. So we should reduce the China's income. That is the answer. And so in this case, what kind of implication, especially it's related to the Bangladesh, we need to think. When we find, when we enter this hotel, we can find one panel, and one panel of the Mujib Rahman, the hero of the independence. He is a man of the strong spirit. If so, Bangladesh is a strong country. If so, when we face the China threat, when we face the US-China, the Cold War, in this case, when we rely on such kind of a strong spirit. Now Japan, US, India, Australia, from the Quad, or the many other countries join this move to maintain the rule-based order. If so, Bangladesh also show the spirit of Rahman to deter China's ambition. That is very important, and indeed, we expect Bangladesh will show very strong will in the world stage. That is why Japan, US, India, Australia, and Bangladesh is one group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you just identify yourself? I cannot see from here.
Excellent military academics as well as policy analysts, and definitely we have benefited out of the operational side of it. We had little discussion about tactics as well as strategy. Anyway, having said that, I have a just small point. We are looking at Bay of Bengal. And this is good that there is a one step in terms of reduction in property rights stability in Bay of Bengal by having the UNCLOS decision on Bay of Bengal and delimitation. Secondly, what we see is obviously there are renewed discussion on deterrence, because Henry Kissinger, if I could remember, he has said in Economist article, where saying that we have to really rethink about deterrence. But having said that, while India has this cold start, so looking at that level, while some academics are questioning about the Nash equilibrium, so why, as if the answer to non-investment in Bay of Bengal, particularly in terms of harnessing its huge hydrocarbon resource, is it due to the fact that Bangladesh requires a kind of a deterrence that would ensure property rights stability and thereby smooth the risk, and so renewed investment would take place? So I would really like to hear your thoughts about that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll probably take two more questions because we really have to end this, and I'm sorry. But let's just take the questions, and if someone can answer here, otherwise, we'll have to take it outside because this is an interesting panel. Yes. But you just have to pose the question. Please don't give a lecture.
Thank you very much, and I'll be brief. So, first of all, Bangladesh, as many other small states in this region, is located in a region with two major rising powers with global aspiration. As a reader of politics and international relations, I find the cognitive origin of the Chinese aspiration, global aspiration, can be found in the concept of Tangxia, all under the heaven, where the concept of tributary states fits into the narratives of the small states in South Asia. And in the context of India, there is also this concept of Akhand Bharat, first coined by Chanakya. Now, none of these concepts sits well with the small states in South Asia because it sort of challenges their normative values and also their sovereignties if those cognitive beliefs gets materialized in their aspiration to become a regional power. So my question to particularly General Sinha sir, and also Dr. Nagao to 2 points. One is, does India, I would love to have a Chinese participants in this panel to have the Tangxia question answered, but would you sort of elaborate how does a concept of Akhand Bharat really exist? And to the academician, as you know, for small states, there is, in the international relations, there is a concept of balancing versus hedging. What should Bangladesh or small states like Bangladesh do in sort of when they're sandwiched between these two aspirational major powers? Should they follow balancing or hedging?
Thank you. I'll take just one more question. Yes. Yes, that's you. Please,
Thank
quick,
you
short.
thank you for giving me the floor. I know the time's constraint. So I would like to tell that the one China policy is an universal consensus to the international community and the norms in the international relations. So I would like to know that also mention that the recent visit, the Chinese ambassador has said that the recent visit of the White House Speaker Nancy has said that gave a wrong signals in the separatisms of the Taiwan independence. And as we know that the Chinese government has said that Bangladesh will be abide by China. But India is with Europe and USA, and we know that India and Bangladesh has also a friendly relation. So what are your points or what are your views on the effects of the Cold War or the war of China and Taiwan in Bangladesh and as well as South Asian countries?
Thank you. Very good question, actually. Yes, if you want to respond. Yeah, in 1 minute.
Respond to Professor Titume's.
Okay, one.
Yeah, I think if I have understood you correctly, Professor Titume, you are saying that should we make the investment in Bay of Bengal and create a deterrence?
I'm saying that should we
Yes, I agree totally. What you have said, proposed is, I'm totally with you. We have to have deterrence in the Bay of Bengal. Why? Because Bay of Bengal is linked to South China Sea through Malacca Strait. And these are called twins in two different oceans. Bay of Bengal is the twin in the Indian Ocean, and east twin is in the Pacific, is the South China Sea. And we have two SWOCs, sea lines of communications. One going to Southeast Asia, and the other is going to the Middle East. And for that, and the blue economy is in the Bay of Bengal, because Bangladesh has got no natural resources on the shore, but offshore we have oil and gas. So to protect that, we need to invest in the military forces, especially for the Navy and for the Air Force.
Thank you. Thank you. So can someone respond to the second
May I
question?
come in? May I come in, Tito Professor Tito? You know very well that the future of Bangladesh lies on Bay of Bengal, not what the land we have. And Sparso gives us a hope that the lands which are coming up, which would be, if not equal, to half of Bangladesh, in spite of fact that we are threatened by climate change or whatever it is, rising sea or whatever it is. And the sort of examples I can give you towards my maternal grandfather's area, that is southmost area of Bangladesh. I'm talking about south of Bhola is Manpura. If you visit there, you will find that even Bay of Bengal dries up at one particular place, particular time. Of course, the Bay of Bengal is the future of Bangladesh. There's no doubt about it. We have not invested much. We really have not invested much. I don't know why. And the deterrent you are talking about, that is one big issue. How much is deterrent for Bangladesh? I can just tell you one thing, that if there is a conflict as a perception, geopolitics and strategy is based on perception. If there is a conflict between China, USA, of course, the India comes in. In that case, we will be just landlocked.
Thank you.
Just landlocked. Imagine a line, Indian line from Visakhapatnam to Nicobar Island, where they have a separate command altogether. So where do we
There
go?
were two questions for the two
Where
of you.
do we go? Therefore, we need deterrent to break through either or protect whatever we have in Bay of Bengal.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think just to give you an idea about Akhand Bharat, I think let me clear that the Prime Minister and all of us as Indians are extremely conscious of the sovereign boundaries of each nation that it is. We have cultural and civilizational linkages, but today all South Asian countries have an independent identity, and I think that's how it is respected, and we meet as equals. The size does not matter. So I think Akhand Bharat is for our internal dissonance. As you're aware of it, I mean, we've got enough problems within our country because between the developing parts of India, there is a certain amount of disparity. And if you see what the Prime Minister has talked about, inclusive growth, that inclusive growth is what he's talking about in an Akhand Bharat. That we want this Bharat which can be resilient, this India which we today shouldn't have the one which lives in urban cities and the one which lives in rural. The urban enjoys the benefits of development and the economy that is growing. We are now the 5th largest economy in the world, and maybe become 5 trillion in another 3 to 5 years. So that economic advantage should go down to all. And this Akhand Bharat is that there should be no dissonance between different societal groups, ethnic groups, different regional areas. There should be an inclusive development. And I think that's what he looks at, the neighborhood first policy, that Sagar Mala, they're all linked to this fact that India can only grow and sort out its internal problems if the nations which surround us, who are independent entities, also grow in the same harmonized manner. And if you see, the issue of enclaves was sorted out after what, 70 years? Sorry, the time is
No,
over.
it's okay. There's just, I think he needs to respond, right?
Okay, thank you very much.
But
we
can you do it in 1 minute? Really, I mean, they're just knocking.
Okay, so I received the two questions, I think. So about the one China policy, I need to say, we do not say the one China policy is our policy. We respect one China policy, it's China's policy. So that's why we should not mistake. One China policy is China's policy, and we respect it. But this is not our policy. We do not admit. And so secondly, about the second question, I need to say, what should Bangladesh do, especially the infrastructure project came from China? Yes, there is a possibility it is a trap. But at the same time, firstly, Bangladesh should check carefully. And at the same time, Bangladesh asked the Quad or share the information with the Quad. And is there something alternative project, or is this a trap? And get some kind of information, or if there is alternative project, Bangladesh can get the chance to negotiate with both at the same time. Indeed, Bangladesh has already done. When China suggests Sonadia port project, Japan suggests Matabari port project as a counter project. Finally, after Bangladesh check carefully, Bangladesh accepts Matabari port project. Both are located in Chittagong. So that's why Bangladesh has already done very clever, very good decision. That's why Bangladesh can survive. Continue to this great decision.
Thank you. Thank you. 30 seconds,
I
maybe.
just want to add to this that
Yes.
we are now in an excellent situation as far as India-China-Bangladesh relations. You see, both are our trading partners, major trading partners. India, China #1, India #2, and with China our export is not growing, but with India our export is growing, and both are also investors. And Bangladesh is sort of balancing between the Chinese investment, the Indian investment, the Japanese investment, the Korean investment. And in fact, everybody is eager to invest in Bangladesh. This is the best climate, and this is also a deterrent. But our worries are between the Chinese and the Indian border. I don't care what happens in Ladakh, but like 62, if something happens here in your Arunachal, or more closely even Nathula, where even in 67 you had a conflict, which is just 100 kilometers from Bangladesh border. That's what worries me. And
Thank
we
you.
only pray that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, audience, for coming, for giving us a patient hearing. And thank you, my panelists. Thank you very much.